Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Oration 2022. We will now begin the proceedings of this evening. Please rise for the ceremonial procession. Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Sri Lanka Mata, Apa Sri Lanka, Namo 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 Mata, Sundara Sri Barini.
For this, I would like to warmly welcome President, College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, Dr. Lakshmi Somatunga. Our orator this evening, Dr. Malavige Amila Suranga. Representing the past presidents of the college, Dr. Vinya Aryaratna. Representing the fellows of the College of Community Physicians, Dr. Nihal Abe Singha. Mr. Ravi De Silva to represent the family of Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva. Representing the Ministry of Health, Additional Secretary Development, Mr. Chandraratna Pallegama, and Additional Secretary Administration, Mrs. Attanayaka. Mr. Tushara Upuldania, Prison Commissioner General. Mr. M.D. Dharmasena, Father of the Orator, and Dr. Shiromi Maduage, Secretary to the CCPSL. Thank you all. Please be seated. I would now like to invite Dr. Lakshmi Somatunga, President, College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, to address the gathering. I would now like to invite to the head table President, College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, Dr. Lakshmi Somatunga, our orator this evening, Dr. Amila Suranga, and Secretary of the CCPSL, Dr. Shiromi Maduage. I would now like to invite Dr. Lakshmi Somatunga, President, College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, to address the gathering.
Ayubowan. Past presidents and fellows of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, my council members, members of the college, Dr. Amila Suranga, the orator today, members of Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva family, distinguished invitees, Health Ministry officials, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka has a long history. Started as the Society of Medical Officers of Health, which was established during the British colonial era in 1927. Dr. F.E. Bridger was the founder president of the society. Later, this was converted to an association. And in 1994, our college was formed, and Professor Dulitha Fernandu was the first president. Today, I stand before you as the 27th president of this prestigious college to welcome all of you to the Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Oration. First of all, let me welcome all our past presidents and fellows of the college with much respect. Next, though it's our own event, I welcome all my council members. Also, let me welcome all the members of the college, Dr. Amila Suranga, the orator today, Health Ministry officials, and all the distinguished invitees. Coming to the very special welcome, it's a great honor to welcome all the family members and guests of late Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva. Distinguished guests, you all are a very special group selected to be here today to witness one of our major annual events of the college. I welcome all of you with gratitude for gracing the occasion. Also, I consider it a duty to speak a little about the late Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva. Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva held a number of positions in the Ministry of Health, and especially the post of Chief Epidemiologist. He has been a dedicated leader in public health with the highest level of commitment to work. On behalf of the college, I express my sincere gratitude for generosity of Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva family. My council and I were determined to accomplish all our dues before concluding our tenure. We pay our gratitude to this legend through conducting the annual Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Memorial Oration today. Once again, let me welcome all of you to this important event of the college. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I would now like to once again call upon the President CCPSL, Dr. Lakshmi Somatunga, to introduce our orator this evening, Dr. Malavige Amila Suranga, Senior Registrar, Policy Analysis and Development Unit, Ministry of Health, for the 2022 Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Oration, committing to leave no one behind, improving prison health sector.
Once again, Ayubowan. Dr. Malavige Amila Suranga is specialized in public health and is currently working as an acting consultant community physician at the Directorate of Policy Analysis and Development of the Ministry of Health. He was awarded the MBBS degree with second-class honors from the University of Sri Jayawardenepura in year 2011. Masters in Community Medicine in 2017, and Doctor of Community Medicine in year 2021 from University of Colombo. He completed his primary and secondary education from D.S. Senanayaka College, Colombo 7. He was an outstanding student at school for academic affairs as well as for extracurricular activities. The school has paved the path for Dr. Suranga to shape into a hardworking, humane individual. Dr. Suranga completed his internship at the base hospital Horana and started his medical career at the District General Hospital Vaunia as a medical officer, blood bank, in year 2014. Following successful completion of the MSc in community medicine, he was appointed to the Youth, Elderly and Disabled Unit of the Ministry of Health, where he got the first experience in the field of public health. He was attached to the Directorate of Mental Health, Ministry of Health, during years 2018 and 2019 as a registrar in community medicine, where he identified his passion for mental health of vulnerable populations. He carried out his MD research, Psychological Distress Among Prison Inmates in Sri Lanka, Prevalence, Risk Factors Associated with Suicidal Behavior, and Measures to Overcome Psychological Distress at Administrative and Individual Level. This was the first time such research has been carried out among prison inmates in Sri Lanka. During this study, the suicidal behavior questionnaire was validated to the local context, which is a comprehensive tool to measure the suicidal intent of the inmates. Since the start of his research, he has worked very closely with the Department of Prisons up to date and is carrying out various programs for the prison inmates with the collaboration of the National STD/AIDS Control Program. Dr. Suranga has disseminated the findings of his MD research at a special gathering held with the participation of higher officials from the Department of Prisons and the Ministry of Health. The Department of Prison has incorporated the recommendations of his study into their new policies and national strategies. The findings of the research were also published in peer-reviewed journals. Following the completion of his registrar period in community medicine, Dr. Suranga was appointed to the National Cancer Control Program in year 2020 and completed his senior registrar period in community medicine at the National Cancer Control Program before appointing to his current station. Dr. Suranga has special interest in research on tobacco and substance abuse, where he won the Best Oral Presentation at the National Symposium on Tobacco and Alcohol Prevention conducted by the National Authority on Tobacco and Alcohol of Sri Lanka. Dr. Suranga was the Assistant Treasurer of our college during year 2018 and 2019. Dr. Amila Suranga was born to Mr. Malavige Don Dharmasena and Mrs. Piyasili Manatunga as the youngest of a family of 3. He is happily married to Dr. Gayatri Veeratunga, and they are blessed with 2 lovely daughters, Netumi and Hirudi. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor of inviting Dr. Malavige Amila Suranga to present the 2022 Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Oration of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka.
I would now like to invite the President of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, Dr. Lakshmi Somatunga, to present the Orators Award to our orator this evening, Dr. Amila Suranga.
Thank you very much, Madam, for your kind introduction. Very good evening to all of you. When you are in prison, you have but one desire, freedom. If you fall in prison, you do not think about freedom. You think about health. Health is therefore more important. 11 million people in prison globally comprise the left behind. given their extensive health needs underpinned by adverse political, economic, environmental, social, and lifestyle factors prior to imprisonment. Situation is no different in Sri Lanka. The President, past presidents, fellows, and members of the Council of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, high officials from the Ministry of Health, family members of the late Dr. A.V.K.V.D. Silva, Commissioner General of Prisons and higher prison officials, all distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the President and the Council of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka for according me the privilege of delivering the Dr. A.V.K.V.D. Silva Memorial Oration 2022, which commemorates the life and work of Dr. A.V.K.V.D. Silva, a pioneer in public health in Sri Lanka. Dr. A.V.K.V.D. Silva, one of the most significant epidemiologists of our country, headed epidemiology unit as the chief epidemiologist to the Ministry of Health from 1980 to 1986. He was the program manager for hallmark public health programs such as expanded program of immunization, diarrheal disease control program, and annual malaria review, and was a national consultant for the World Health Organization and UNICEF. His dedicated work has significantly contributed to the current improvement of the public health indicators in the country. Now we have to change our focus to the epidemiology of the vulnerable populations in Sri Lanka to improve their health indicators. As an honor to late Dr. A.V.K.V.D. Silva, I would like to give an eye-opening of disease epidemiology and existing prison health system in Sri Lanka, highlighting the importance of leaving no one behind for a sustainable development in a country. President and distinguished invitees, I now invite you to take a journey with me to a place I hope you will never end up in. Let me begin my oration titled, A Committing to Leave No One Behind, Improving Prison Health Sector, a population which resembles a significant cross-section of our society. Long years ago, the concept of prisons was originated during the 16th century in the Europe. During that era, houses for correction were established for rehabilitation of minor offenders, which has strict discipline and employed as hard labor within the institutions. The phenomenon of imprisonment became an accepted method of punishing convicted criminals, was progressed with time. So today, we call prison as an institution for the confinement of persons who have been remanded in custody by a judicial authority or following conviction for a crime. Let me look at the history of the prisons in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka inherited the present system of prisons from the British as the many other areas of criminal justice administration. The first legislation regarding the prison titled An Ordinance for the Better Regulation of Prisons was introduced in 1844. With that, Velikada Prison was established in the same year. Thereafter, an uniform prison system was developed under the control of Inspector General of Prisons. Mahara Prison and Bogambara prisons were developed in 1875 and 1876 respectively. In year 1905, the Department of Prisons was separated from the Department of Police. The Angunukola Palace prison was incorporated to the prison system in year 2017. Globally, prison institutions are categorized according to the security measurements taken at each institution. This is high security, medium security, and low security institutions. In high security settings, prison inmates who have committed serious crimes are held and movements of every prisoner is closely supervised. In medium security settings, prisoners are expected to work, attend educational programs. The prison inmates that possess low risk to the public safety are kept in the low security settings. Sri Lanka prison system has given its categorization as closed, open, and work camps according to the level of security. Closed prisons contains convicted prisoners who have got sentenced for life and condemned due to serious criminal activities. Open prison camps are prisons without a perimeter wall where selected prisoners are held under minimum security conditions. Prisons without a perimeter wall where short-term and medium-term offenders are detained under minimum security conditions are categorized as work camps. When we consider the prison institutions in Sri Lanka, there are 37 prison institutions distributed in the country. 4 closed prisons, namely Velikada, Mahara, Agunukola Palassa, and Dumbara, open prison camps situated in Pallekele and Anuradhapura. Correctional centers for youthful offenders are established in Pallansena and Taldena. Wataraka has the only training school for youthful offenders in the country. Under the work camps, Ambepus and Veeravilla functions as drug rehabilitation centers. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk to you about the prison population. Prison population consists of prison inmates and prison staff. They are dependent on each other. Health of one party will indirectly influence the health of the other party. Therefore, considering the health in prison system, it is important to consider both parties as a whole and provide necessary health services with emphasis on health promotion. Prison inmates can be categorized mainly into 2 as convicted and unconvicted. Unconvicted are the prison inmates who are awaiting trial. Convicted prison inmates are ones who have been convicted of offense under the law by various courts in the island and sentenced to a term of imprisonment. Once entering into the prison, orientation speech is given by the rehabilitation officers, followed by categorization of work decided by the prison authority based on their skills. All individuals are mandatory to undergo medical checkup at the admission, but there are several gaps in the implementation is noticed. The convicted inmates further can be divided into life sentence, that is incarcerated for the duration of lifetime, condemned, that is who have given the death sentence, and appellants, a person who has appealed to a higher court for a reversal of the decision of a lower court. Youthful offenders are the offenders who are in the age range of 16 to 22 years, and they are not considered as prison inmates. This shows the number of convicted and unconvicted prison inmates admission in year 2020. So according to this, unconvicted percentage is higher compared to the convicted in both categories, and male dominance is clearly seen in both categories as well. At a given point of time, 27,000 prison inmates were in prison institutions in Sri Lanka. This is the pattern of direct admission of convicted and unconvicted inmates to all the institutions from year 2016 to 2020. All these years, unconvicted number is higher compared to the convicted. For each convicted female, 33 males get convicted, and for each unconvicted female, 17 males get unconvicted. The ratio among convicted to unconvicted females is 1 to 10, while the ratio among males is 1 to 5. In 2020, convicted and unconvicted amount has gone down significantly. This is mainly due to the COVID-19 effects on delay in the court activities. Now let me talk about youthful offenders. Youthful offenders, they are not considered as prison inmates and are in the age range of 16 to 22 years. These offenders are held in a separate institution in Wataraka. Sunitha Pasala, established within the premises of the institution, functions by the Ministry of Education that makes sure the right for education for the offenders. Daily average of youthful offenders in the prison is around 32. According to the paragraph, there is a clear increase of admissions from year 2016 to 2019. But again, you can see a significant drop in year 2020. Again, this is due to the COVID-19 effects on the court activities. This slide shows the rate of recidivist and narcotic drug offenses of prison inmates from year 2016 to 2020. Recidivist is a person who has been admitted to the prison on more than 2 occasions. And these type of prison inmates are kept in higher security prison institutions in Velikada, Dumbara, Mahara prisons. Average release rate is around 45.4%. Among the convicted prison inmates, most common type of offense is the narcotic drug offense. Average rate of narcotic drug offense is 48.4%. Prison staff is other major component of the prison population. They are divided into two levels: Prison Commissioner General, Additional Commissioner General, and Commissioner of Prisons are at the prison headquarters, and they are overlooking the national level duties. Prison Superintendent, Assistant Superintendent, and Chief Jailer engage in administration of prison institutions, while rehabilitation officers work close with prison inmates for their welfare. Jailers and prison guards take care of the prison inmates, ensuring the security of the prison institutions. Improve the quality of each person's life with leaving no one behind is the main target of Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 goals and 169 targets to be achieved by 2030. Each goal is dependent on other goals, and they are universal and integrated. The prison sector has direct impact on the goal 3, good health and well-being, and the goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institution. Goal 3, good health and well-being, is centered to all the 17 goals, and if it is not achieved, the implementation of all other goals will be compromised. Therefore, it is important to give due attention to the prison health system to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals without leaving anyone behind. When we consider the Sustainable Development Goal 3, there are 13 targets identified under the Goal 3. Among them, maternal mortality, neonatal and child mortality, infectious diseases, non-communicable diseases, substance abuse, sexual and reproductive health, universal health coverage are directly related to the prison health system. Rest of the targets under the Goal 3 contributes to above targets as well. Under the 169 SDG targets, SDG Goal 3 has 13 targets and 38 indicators related to the health, while 8 health-related indicators are identified among the rest of the 156 targets. Altogether, 46 indicators are related to the health in Sustainable Development Goals. Now let me talk to you about Universal Health Coverage and Service Coverage Index of Sri Lanka. Under the target 3.8 of the SDG 3, indicator 3.8.1 and 3.8.2 measures the universal health coverage. Indicator 3.81 measures the coverage of essential health services, and this is being measured by the Service Coverage Index. It is a scale from 0 to 100 based on the average coverage of the essential services using 14 indicators. These include family planning, pregnancy and delivery care, child immunization, child treatment, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, malaria, water and sanitation, hospital access, health workforce, health security, hypertension, diabetes, and tobacco. The Service Coverage Index of Sri Lanka has been 67% for the year 2018. In Sri Lanka, indicators regarding hypertension, diabetes does not get included at all from the prison sector due to the unavailability of a screening program within the prison sector. Tobacco has two forms, as smoke and smokeless. Data regarding the tobacco use also not get included from the prison sector. If a country does not include prison sector into the calculation of Service Coverage Index, it might result in an overestimation of the progression in the country. SDG Goal 16, that is directly related to the prison under the peace, justice, and strong institutions. Under the target 16.3, the indicator of remand inmates as a proportion of overall prison inmates is being directly reported by the prison sector. Target set for the proportion to be at below 50%, but it has been around 80% for Sri Lanka, which is well above the target, and the trend shows a slight increase as well. Increase in remand inmates is mainly contributed by the drug offenses. Having more than 2 grams of drugs within a person is a crime according to the law of the country. Most addicted persons normally keep more than 2 grams of drugs within them most of the time. So all of them who get caught to the police end up in the remand. Following series of higher level meetings with the Attorney General, Police Department and Prison Department, they were able to raise this limit up to 5 grams, considering the current situation of the country. But this will not be the sole solution to this problem. It is high time to think about proper rehabilitation of drug users as they are at several stages of addictions. Mixing them up in remand makes the less addicted users end up becoming drug dealers. Ladies and gentlemen, let me discuss the prison health system from here on. It is discussed under 4 main areas. Governance, that is policies, laws, international conventions related to the prison department that is relevant to the health of the prison population. Regulations, circulars, guidelines issued by the prison department for health of the prison population. Health surveillance system of the prison department and health service delivery. All the governance and regulations of the prison department will have a relationship with the health of the prison population. Therefore, it is important to consider the health outcomes when developing policies and laws in the prison sector. So these are the governing documents for the prison sector at the moment. So Prison Ordinance 1877, Youthful Ordinance 1939, Constitution of Sri Lanka 1978, Beijing Rules 1985, Bangkok Rules in 2010, Nelson Mandela Rules in 2015, Prison HIV Policy in 2017, National Strategic Plan on Prison Reforms on 2020, and Plan Overcoming Prison Overcrowding in 2021. Now let me go through each by each. So the Constitution. The Sri Lanka has signatory to several international documents that ensure the health of population, including prison population. So the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, Convention on the Rights of Child, Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discriminations. All these rights will give the right to the prison inmates to get their rights on health. Even though the Constitution of Sri Lanka does not identify the health as a fundamental right under the Article 12, it describes about the right to equality. This will ensure the equal rights for the health for the prison population as well as the rest of the citizens in the country. The Prison Ordinance. All the prison administration in line with the Prison Ordinance, which was developed in 1877 and later amended, was done in 1956. This carries separate section for health of prisoners, role of medical officer and supply of food for prison inmates. Under the health of prison inmates, it describes about treating of ill patients, record keeping regarding patients, designated place to treat patients, and transfer of patients for specialized care and mental health services. The ordinance has not been updated for several years and does not include the health of prison staff, which is very important for the prison health system. Other than this, prevention, screening, promotion, and rehabilitation paths in relation to the health not included in the current prison ordinance. Youthful Offenders Ordinance. As I mentioned earlier, youthful offenders are a separate category and they are not considered as prison inmates. They are between the age of 16 to 21 and they are mostly without a proper guardian. They are incarcerated for 3 years irrespective of their offense. From the youthful ordinance, they are kept separated from the rest and given the right of education as well. Again, this ordinance has not been updated since 1944, and the young females are not identified as youthful offenders under this ordinance, and they are kept in normal prisons. Unique health needs of adolescents, nutritional requirements are not addressed by this ordinance. UN standards, minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners. The UN standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners were initially adopted by the UN Congress on the prevention of crime and treatment on offenders in 1955, and Sri Lanka has signatory to that. Further to that, these rules were revised in 2015, and this revised version is known as the Nelson Mandela rules. Out of the 122 rules, revisions were carried out in 9 main areas, including health. So staff training, terminology, complaints and inspections, access to legal representation, investigation of deaths and torture in custody, restrictions, discipline and sanctions, medical and health services, vulnerable groups of prisoners, prisoners' inherent dignity as human beings. These are the main areas that have been revisions were carried out. Under the medical and health services, it clearly mentions that it is the state responsibility to provide health for the prisoners. And the standard of this health should be equal to the community, including public health. And it should ensure continuity of treatment and care. Health promotion to each prisoner should be there. Multidisciplinary team with emphasis on mental health should be available. And there should be individual medical records, and there should be referrals for specialized care. And there should be a prompt access to medical attention in urgent cases. Medical screening on admission, inspection of food, hygiene, sanitation, ventilation, clothing, and bedding by public health body. These should be included under the minimum rules. A checklist available to conduct internal assessment of implementation of the rules in the prison sector has been developed by the UN. Sri Lanka is committed to maintain these standards in prison system. However, authorities have failed in some aspects, and it has been concluded in the prison report of the Human Rights Commissions in 2020, following an island-wide survey. They have not done evaluating using the checklist to identify the level of implementation in the country, but they have considered the Mandela rules in developing their future plans. Another UN rule is the Bangkok Rule, or formerly the United Nations Rules for the Treatment of Women Prisoners. Is a set of 70 rules focused on the treatment of female offenders and prisoners adopted by United Nations General Assembly. It covers the provisions of appropriate gender-specific health care with preventive services, treat humanely, protection from violence, preserve dignity during search, and provide for prisoners' children. Although it has mentioned about gender-specific preventive services, screening for breast and cervical cancers is not provided by the prison or Ministry of Health. Prison department have provided daycare centers with nursery education in certain institutions to provide better care for the children of prisoners whom they live with their mother until the age of 5 years. The implementation of these standards in prison sector is not optimal, including the contribution of health and the education sectors. United Nations standard minimum rules for the juvenile justice provide guidance to provision of protection of children's right, physical, mental, social development, and legal protection in conditions of peace, freedom, dignity, and security. Within the Sri Lankan prison system, they are tried to separate them and provide above, but it is unclear and questionable at the moment. Furthermore, adequate attention not given to specific physical and mental health problems of youth, and better physical, mental, and social well-being is not ensured at the moment. So this is the summary of the governance. So we have discussed about prison ordinance, youthful offenders ordinance. All the prison sector activities are carried out according to these documents, but the main problem is they have not been updated for long years. Mandela rules, Bangkok rules, and Beijing rules under the UN. Sri Lanka bound to execute UN minimum standard for the prisoners. Proper monitoring and evaluation not being carried out on its implementation at the moment, and obstacles in implementing these standards are clearly seen. Although prison ordinance is outdated, prison authorities has developed prison reforms considering the international rules, standards and regulations. They have identified 9 strategies to be reformed. That is prison overcrowding, prison management, prison officer training, prison health care, security measures, amendment of prison ordinance, rehabilitation, women and youthful offenders and e-prison concept. Under the prison health care, they have identified mental health, health education, training, infectious diseases, and health services to be reformed as soon as possible. And under the prison health care, they have identified key performance indicators to be achieved. That is, number of prison hospitals upgraded to base hospitals. And their target was by 2022 have 2 base hospitals. But at the moment, they have achieved 0. And number of institutions with healthy lifestyle clinics, and they have target by 2022 to have 10 clinics. But again, the achieved is 0. And the percentage of annual allocation to health infrastructure development, and their target is by 2022 is to have 10% of the budget. But at the moment, they have got a COVID funding, and they have developed 4 2-story buildings at the Pallansena prisons, and they will, at the moment, this is being hampered by the current economic situation. Regular monitoring and evaluation has not happened in these strategies. This is a very important strategic plan in achieving the global targets and implementation of global standards. Now let me talk about short, mid-term, and long-term plans to overcome the prison overcrowding. So the prison department has identified overcoming the overcrowding will reduce the depression among prison inmates and prison officers, and it will reduce violence among prison inmates, and it will reduce the risk of communicable diseases and improve the sanitary problems. So they have identified short, medium, and long-term strategies. Under short, releasing prisoners, reviewing the legality of detention. Under the medium, they have incorporated cooperation between criminal justice agencies, speeding of criminal justice process, and increase prison capacity. As long-term plans, they have establishing a sustainable and effective legal aid mechanism and reduce use of pre-trial detention, alternatives to imprisonments, review and revision of legislative framework. Then this is the interesting part. Let me show you the graph. This shows the percentage of overcrowding in prison institutions in Sri Lanka. That is the proportion of current number of prison inmates and the capacity number that can be kept in prison institutions in Sri Lanka. So you can clearly see that is ranging between 150 to 200 and more than 200. So in year 2020, you can see it is touching 250. This is mainly because of the COVID has caused the release of prison inmates into a problem. So where should be? We should be around 100 or below 100, but we are around 250. According to the World Prison Brief, Sri Lanka is in the 28th position of the world in relation to the proportion of remand prisoners. Regular and frequent monitoring and evaluation not happening, and COVID-19 and financial crisis had hampered the progression of these short, mid, and long-term plans to overcome the overcrowding. Prison HIV Prevention, Treatment and Care Policy, 2017. So the Prison HIV Prevention, Treatment, Care Policy was developed in 2017 following a well-structured HIV prevention program in the prison sector, where testing of HIV among inmates began in 2012. Advocacy, training of trainers, and peer leader programs has been conducted since 2019. Peer leaders are given training on prevention of HIV and STI and their duties to make the other aware about it. So far, 1,970 peer leaders has been trained, and 1 peer leader supposed to make 20 persons aware. HIV testing is done by the nearest STD clinic to the prison institution once a month in a mobile basis. HIV positivity rate is less than 0.1 from the beginning. And so far, 39 cases has been identified of HIV cases during these years. This identification has improved the outcome of individual inmates and other at-risk inmates as well as the families by preventing the mother-to-child transmission. Still, the program cannot cover all the inmates as it conducts as a once-a-month mobile clinic. Therefore, skill mix should be introduced to make the inmates to do self-testing, and it should be facilitated by the National STD AIDS Control Program. So, let me go to the regulations. So, the regulations regarding the health, most of the circulars, guidelines, and other documents that are issued by the Ministry of Health are applied for the prison health system as well. But the environmental restrictions within the prison system has made it difficult to implement these circulars and guidelines in regard to prison population. At the present, these kind of circulars, guidelines, and other supporting documents in regard to the health developed by the prison department is minimum. One of those guidelines is contingency plan for the COVID-19 in Sri Lanka prisons developed by the Ministry of Health. This was mainly targeting 4 categories: prison inmates, prison officers, prison health staff, and general practice. During the COVID-19, immediate control measures were taken and mandatory isolation and quarantine was carried out by the prison department with the help of the Ministry of Health. Vaccine prioritization was given to the prison population, but maintaining distance was a challenge due to the overcrowding, and that made the prison inmates agitated. As you all remember, a riot happened in the Mahara prison due to social distancing becoming a challenge. Health surveillance system in prison department. World Health Organization has identified main components of a surveillance system in a prison under the prison health framework. They are system for recording deaths in custody, completeness of reporting systems, health records in prisons, capacity of systems for timely reporting of surveillance data, system for notification of infectious diseases, training for healthcare providers for coding for the data, data capture in health information records in prisons, and integration of prison information in the National Health Information System. The HIV screening and TB screening has a complete, strong surveillance system within the prison department with the collaboration of Ministry of Health. Statistic unit of the prison department has developed a prison information management system which can store individual data of the prison inmates, but the health information not been prioritized in surveillance. Still, the health data has not updated to the system. Facilities are not provided to access these data at the prison hospitals. Surveillance system will be important in identifying challenges and making recommendations and decisions making to improve health. The surveillance system should be connected with the National Health Data System to measure the universal health coverage and the achievements of SDG. So there are very few studies have been carried out in prisons in Sri Lanka to provide data and evidence on disease burden. Such a research was carried out by Dr. Suranga in 2019 on mental health aspects of prison inmates. This was an island-wide research carried among 1,738 prison inmates, consist of all categories of prison inmates and both sexes. There are 5 components in the study. So the determination of prevalence of psychological distress, identifying the risk factors for psychological distress, validation of the suicidal behavior questionnaire, and prevalence of suicidal behavior and associated factors, and to identify coping strategies for psychological distress. Psychological distress was measured using the Kessler's K10 tool. Among the study participants, 60.5% were having psychological distress, and unconvicted and female prison inmates had higher prevalence, while the distress prevalence was less among open prison camps. Risk factors were identified following a case control study, and binary logistic regression model was used to identify the risk factors. So there are 2 categories of risk factors: institutional factors and personal factors. Institutional factors being an unconvicted prisoner and unsatisfactory availability of clothes, unsatisfactory facilities to dry clothes, unsatisfactory availability of towels, and unsatisfactory communication with the family, and treatment of the prison officers, and reading books before entering the prison, and Inadequate facilities for recreational activities were the institutional factors. And having a disability, having an unemployed family member, being violent within the prison, being stigmatized by within the prison, and having asthma, having joint pain, and not using substances were the personal risk factors. So not using substance was a risk factor. Now you might be thinking why. This could be mainly because of the people who get imprisoned use substance as a method to overcome the distress, as there are gaps in facilities to conduct extra activities such as recreational activities. This gap has to be addressed immediately. So the suicidal behavior. Suicidal behavior is described as having a suicidal thoughts, previous attempts of suicide, or sharing of thoughts regarding committing suicide in future. When considering the suicide, most of the suicide in prisons get underreported. Suicidal behavior was measured using the suicidal behavior questionnaire following the validation. So among the study population, 22.7% of prison inmates had suicidal behavior. And among unconvicted and females, this prevalence was higher. And among the youthful offenders, it was around 40% and it was still high. These are the associated factors for suicidal behavior. Number of court cases, having psychological distress, missing the family, violence during childhood, neglected by the family, witness of suicide, having financial hardships, recent change of prisons, and being stigmatized are the modifiable risk factors. And being a female and age less than 45 years are non-modifiable associated factors. Now let me talk about substance abuse by the prison inmates. When considering the substance use among prison inmates, significant number had used substances following imprisonment as well. They have used smoking, alcohol, betel, heroin, cannabis, non-prescribed drugs, and injectable non-prescribed drugs as they have used before imprisonment. This is a huge challenge for the health as well as the security of the prisons. Therefore, need to take immediate actions from both health as well as the prison administration. This slide again shows an interesting finding. So 254 inmates who have never used substances before becoming imprisonment has started newly to use substances following the imprisonment. So among them, smoking was the most prevalent one. Other than that, again, they have used all the types: alcohol, betel, heroin, cannabis, non-prescribed drugs, injectable non-prescribed drugs as well. This should be considered as a higher priority, and develop preventive strategies should be done immediately. During this study, coping strategies were evaluated that being used by the prison inmates for psychological distress. There were 5 main areas. Those were avoidance of stressful situations, engage in extracurricular activities, engage in religious activities, and talking with others and positive thinking about future were the main areas that they were focusing. So I would like to read out some of the thoughts that were given by prison inmates. One was saying, "In here, the healthcare is not that good. According to my experience, they give same drugs for all the diseases." And one inmate says, "I discuss some of the problems that I face within the prison with my wife." And another one stated, "Playing in the outdoors with fellow prison inmates make me forget about all the problems." And this is the most interesting one. "Sir, rehabilitation of a prison inmate is like cooking a vegetable. We should not cook that vegetable for too long, and we should not rehabilitate a person too long." This is another MD research conducted in community medicine, where 1,708 prison officers included and on burnout done by Dr. Vijay Gunawardhan in 2017. According to her findings, the prevalence of burnout among prison officers is 32.9%. And again, it was high among the correctional officers. And she has identified associated factors for this burnout. That is category of prisons they are working and work experience, perception of shift works, perception on ability to take leave, perception on welfare facilities, amount of work that they are given, and ability to influence departmental policies, utilization of basic training, job found to be dull and boring, job security, overall satisfaction about the job and work environment were the main associated factors, and you can see these almost all can be changed. Then again, the interesting is, as a coping strategy, some prison officers used to deviate their stress to the prison inmates. Another community medicine MD study conducted by Dr. Navaratna among 870 psychotic drug users in Western Province in 2019 revealed that 40.6 of these drug addicts have stolen goods or money to obtain drugs. And among them, 26.1% has been imprisoned. And during the imprisonment, 1.7% had initiated drug use. So again, I emphasize, community-based drug rehabilitation unit for the drug addicts should be established. We have to think about it according to the addiction level. This is another research on sexually transmitted diseases, which was carried by Dr. Vidana Pachara in 2016. So according to this, prison inmates, 32% had poor knowledge, and it was associated with level of education and state of employment. And 57% of prison inmates refused to stay with inmate having STD, and 18.2% had engaged in sex during imprisonment, and it was associated with level of education, age, and recidivist. But this situation could have changed now due to the strong HIV program conducted by the National STD AIDS Control Program. Now let me focus on health service delivery. So the health service delivery of the prison department has two components, that is provided by Department of Prison and provided by the Ministry of Health. So the Department of Prisons provide the infrastructure and equipment for the health service delivery, and the Ministry of Health provides human resources and the medicines. This is the structure of prison service delivery. So it has three components: prison hospitals. Each institution has a hospital. Velikada is the largest hospital. Then again, referrals for specialized care. Inmates will be referred to the nearest government hospital for specialized care, as the prison hospitals provide only the primary care. Then transport of inmates for specialized care. Prison department has only 4 ambulances, and lack of staff and transportation facilities has affected the health of inmates badly. Some prison hospitals are confined to a small area with a bed, which cannot be called as a hospital. Most of the time, all the inmates are taken in the same vehicle to different specialized clinics in the nearest hospital. Therefore, they are not coming on time for the clinics, and all the inmates and officers has to wait until all the others complete their turns. That makes them distressed. This is the distribution of healthcare providers in prison system in 2020. So, Director Prison Health is at the prison headquarters, and he overlooks the prison healthcare system. There are 40 MOs approved and 42 medical officers in positions within only 20 institutions. There is a maldistribution. There are 37 institutions, and these 42 are divided among 20 centers. So prison institutions in Pallekele, Vaunia, Wataraka, Batiklo, Veeravilla, and Trincomalee do not have a single medical officer, while Velikada, Nigambo, and Agunukola Palace has medical officers more than the approved number. And it is same with the registered medical officers. Approved 19, but there are 23 in position, but only distributed among 7 institutions. There are 4 dentists, and again distributed among only 3 institutions. There are only 3 medical laboratory technicians in 2 institutions, and there is a big problem with nursing officers. Only 37 available, and they are distributed among 21 prison institutions. And they are having 7 public health inspectors, and this is due to the COVID. They have been given 3 more public health inspectors to work on COVID-19 situation. So according to the map, most of the prison hospitals are taken care by the visiting doctor. So these discrepancies should be solved as soon as possible by the Ministry of Health. Velikada Prison Hospital is the largest prison hospital in Sri Lanka. It conducts psychiatric, medical, eye, tuberculosis, HIV clinics regularly. And optometrists visit the hospital for prescribing the spectacles for the inmates as well. And it has the capacity to conduct several biochemical tests and has new digital X-ray facilities as well. They have 2 dental clinics and a TB gene expert facilities for confirmation of TB. They have received funding for the development of an ETU as well. Some of the challenges are that they are providing inwards care for only the male inmates. This is due to unavailability of a female nursing officer to provide care for the females. And there is a huge problem of inadequate space and infrastructure to run the hospital at this level. So let me take care about the maternal and child health services. So very few pregnant mothers get imprisoned and they will be referred to the prison medical officer. Before the COVID-19, the additional medical officer and the public health midwife used to visit some institutions to deliver their services. And the deliveries and specialized care of these mothers will be provided in the government institutions. Nutritional aspect of the pregnant mother and the children are not being covered adequately. Health education regarding pregnancy, risk factors during pregnancy, information regarding care of newborn are not being delivered to these women. Non-communicable disease services possess several gaps in the prison health system. Screening is highly inadequate in regard to diabetes, cholesterol, cancer such as cervical, breast and oral screening. They have proposed healthy lifestyle clinics and it should be implemented immediately. Health promotion, risk factor assessment should be introduced into the system, which they have not carried out recently. Having a cadre for health promotion officers will be beneficial. The nutrition status of prison inmates should be considered a high priority as this has direct link with the non-communicable diseases. Mental health services within prison is highly inadequate. In other countries, at the time of admission, a compulsory 3 months mental health module will be conducted for the prison inmates. But in our settings, a proper screening or assessment is not conducted at the admission. Only the 4 main prison hospitals are carrying regular psychiatric clinics. Most of the time, referrals are done to the government hospitals, but the continuity of care is questionable. Counseling has a major role in the prison sector, but the service provision is highly inadequate. Ad hoc manner programs are conducted by several stakeholders to promote the mental health and rehabilitation. So again, I highlight the importance of proper rehabilitation of drug addicts once again. Communicable disease services. Proper screening for communicable diseases are carried out only among HIV and TB. These two have a strong screening conducted by the Ministry of Health. There are public health inspectors to monitor the hygiene, sanitary facilities, water, food quality and conduct health education sessions, but the lack of supervision from higher level was identified gap. Overcrowding is a major challenge in controlling communicable diseases. In regard to TB screening, nearest chest clinic conducts a mobile clinic monthly to identify the infected using sputum check and the chest x-rays. Welfare activities which improves the health. The rehabilitation officers carried out multiple activities to improve the well-being of the prison inmates. They carry out counseling, sport activities, religious activities, cultural events, and help for the self-employment and fund for the scholarships of the family members of the inmates. Further, communication facilities are upgraded in prison institutions within the COVID-19 period. They provide telephone facilities for prison inmates at all institutions, 3 minutes once a week for inmates. And they have provided online family meetings for families who are having the facilities. And they are organizing the family meetings once a year. And they facilitate the higher education of the inmates as well. So they conduct an introductory program for new admissions that covers health, sanitization, and regarding the prison systems, and some And some prison institutions provide facilities to get goods from the canteens following deposit of money by a relative to the canteen. So these all activities will improve the health of the prison inmates as a whole. So let me look at the summary. So under my summary, under the governance, so we have talked about ordinance. These ordinances are all outdated and they are inadequately implementation on health in policies. And in regulations, they are inadequate health aspects not covered by prison circulars, and circulars should be operationalized. In surveillance, even though they have a system available, data is not completed, and they need upgrade and need to be connected to the national level. In service delivery, inadequate health staff, inadequate prison staff, and maldistribution of the staff, and there is a dire need of upgrade of hospitals, and NCD screening needs to be started immediately. So let me highlight the findings regarding the prison health system of Sri Lanka. The policies are outdated, not focused on health and regulations, and they need adaptations. Healthcare systems severely inadequate in relevant provisions of care in some aspects. Outdated infrastructure, shortage of medical resources and medical personnel, and inadequate coordination between prison sector and the health sector is a major drawback. So I would like to present few recommendations to uplift the current prison health system. There should be a prison health advisory committee and a strategic plan should be developed by the Ministry of Health on health of the prison population. And there should be a monitoring and evaluation system which is overseen by the Director of Prison Health. Prison ordinance need to be updated with gender equity including youthful offenders. The identified short, mid and long-term strategies to overcome overcrowding should be implemented immediately to achieve the SGD targets. 5-year prison reform strategic plan should be accelerated and monitored, and evaluation of the activities should be carried out strictly. Restructuring of the distribution of healthcare workers has to be done immediately. Then the establishment of healthy lifestyle clinics for screening of non-communicable diseases has to happen. And upgrade identified prison hospitals to divisional hospital A type, and allocation of family physicians for each clinics will be great for the prison health system. So now it is our time to change the thinking pattern towards the prison inmates. I invite all of you to contribute to make a change. Let's get together to turn the cell into a classroom and the prison into a university, to change the life of prison inmates to betterment and enhance the health for a fruitful society. Let me conclude the presentation with a famous saying, "Sira karuvoda manushyoya." I invite all of you to think, do we treat the most vulnerable of us in a human ways? Is our legal system effective enough? Is our administrative framework diligent enough? Is our health system responsive enough? And finally, are our hearts big enough? Our minds open enough for a moral awakening and a system awakening to address these issues? I would like to take this opportunity to thank my parents, my wife, and my daughters for their enormous support given to me. And I would like to especially thank Dr. Janaki Vidana Patirana, my teacher, who guided me and supervised me during all these years. Without her encouragement and dedication, these achievements would be unrealistic. And I would like to thank Dr. Chitramali De Silva, my MD supervisor, and I would like to thank the Commissioner General of Prisons and all the prison staff and the prison inmates who helped me giving all the data they had, all the problems they are having. And I would like to thank family of the late Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva, President, Council, and the organizing committee as well. Thank you and have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Dr. Amila Suranga, for that interesting and illuminating oration. On behalf of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, I would like to congratulate you on the Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Oration 2022. Now, on behalf of the college, it is indeed with pleasure that I now extend our immense gratitude to the family of Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva for giving this opportunity to present the awards for the best research papers presented at the 27th Annual Academic Sessions 2022 CCPSL. Therefore, we will now have the presentation of the awards. For this, I would like to invite Dr. Lakshmi Somathunga, President CCPSL, to present the awards to the awardees. And I would also like to invite on stage Dr. Sumal Nandasena, Conference Chair, and Dr. Shiromi Madhuage, Secretary CCPSL. Our first award this evening, Dr. HMSST Herath Research Award for the Best Oral Presentation in the category of Occupational Environmental Health. For the abstract, a cluster randomized controlled trial to assess effectiveness of a behavior change intervention to improve functional voice disorders among primary school teachers in Colombo District. The authors are Herath MD, Senarath LDJU, Jasurya C, Jayasingha Jayasal, Suravira SAIK. I invite Dr. M.D. Herath to receive the award. The next award is Dr. Ranjan De Silva Research Award for the Best Oral Presentation in the category of Epidemiology and Communicable Diseases. For the abstract titled, Do I Really Need Treatment for This? The Journey of Seeking Health Care for Cutaneous Leishmaniasis in Rural Sri Lanka. The authors are Gunasekara ST, Vikramasinghe ND, Agampudi TC, Fernando WMS, Lianage C, Dicomitis L, Agampudi SP. I invite Dr. Nuwan Vikramasinghe to receive the award. Our third award this evening is Dr. N.W. Vidyasagara Research Award for the Best Oral Presentation in the category of Maternal Health, Newborn, Child and Adolescent Health. The abstract titled, Advertising Literacy on Non-Core Food and Beverages and Associated Factors Among Grade 12 Children in Colombo. The authors are Gallage A and Almapola C. I invite Dr. Aruni Gallage to receive the award. Our final award this evening is the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka Award for the Best Research Presentation in the category of Health Promotion, Health Systems and Non-Communicable Diseases. For the abstract titled, Are Non-Communicable Diseases and Related High-Risk Behaviors Common Among Residents of Urban Resettlement Flats in Colombo, Sri Lanka? The authors are Vikramasinghe EP, Vijay Muniar, Vithana S, and Sumanapala C. I invite Dr. Inoka Vikramasinghe to receive the award. Thank you, madams. Thank you, sir. I would now like to invite Dr. Shiromi Madhuage, Secretary CCPSL, to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Nimani, for your kind introduction. And good evening, Madam President, orator tonight, Dr. Amila Suranga, council members, past presidents, fellows of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, all the officials from the Ministry of Health, other ministries, prison sector, UN agencies, academia, ladies and gentlemen. I am privileged to deliver the vote of thanks at the Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Oration 2022. Orator tonight, Dr. Amila Suranga, thank you for delivering Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva Oration 2022. President, Council members, past presidents, fellows of the College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka, thank you very much for your continuous support and guidance. Mr. Ravi De Silva and all the family members of late Dr. A.V.K.V. De Silva, your presence today and your continuous support throughout is highly appreciated. And all officials from the Ministry of Health, prison sector, other ministries, UN agencies, academia, thank you for being with us today to grace this occasion. We are fortunate to have a team of motivated, dedicated colleagues who take the leadership in organizing College of Community Physicians of Sri Lanka events. So, let me pay my gratitude to all my colleagues, especially to all the members of the Oration Organizing Committee and all the postgraduate trainees for their untiring support to make this event a success. Our college assistant, Mr. Angelo Ravindran. Thank you, Angelo, for your continuous support. And Dr. Nimani, your contribution in comparing this event is highly appreciated. President and the Council would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all of you who joined with us today, physically, virtually, to witness this event. And let me invite all of you for the reception and wish you a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. We have now reached the end of the evening's proceedings. Please join us for dinner and fellowship in the foyer area in front of the hall. Thank you once again for being with us today. Hope you have a pleasant evening of fellowship and food. Good night and take care. Please rise for the ceremonial procession.